I'm Mark Honeybone from Property Ventures, and welcome to our weekly podcast where we interview prominent members of the investment community along with other professionals in the New Zealand property market. This is a free service from Property Ventures so that you can keep current and learn from some of the best around New Zealand. To check us out, take a look at propertyventures.co.nz. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Hi and welcome back. We're going to interrupt the current series we just started on subdividing and talking about the unitary plan in Auckland. We will carry on that in probably after 3 more podcasts. What we are going to do today is start a 3-series podcast. It's about a development in Christchurch called Ravenswood. Now, the 3rd podcast will actually talk about that, and yes, we will be a bit of a sales for you all from Property Ventures. But what we're going to do before that is we're going to have 2 podcasts with 2 different groups in Christchurch. They are both progressing through the country, and it's really just an information for you about what they do. And if you didn't like us, we found it pretty exciting, and it's just another way you can do property and build property. Now, the first one today we're going to do is talking to a chap called Bob Burnett. Now, he's a very experienced architect in Christchurch and very well known in Christchurch for what he's done. Now, he with others have started this movement called super homes, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the super home movement is gathering the very best in learning products and expertise to help people get a much better new house for your money. So this suits the investor as well as the homeowner. These homes could be 50 metres square, they could be 480 square metres, and we've got both that we can show people. So no matter, they will be built to a much higher design and performance standard than they would have been otherwise. So part of their idea is to create a healthy, energy efficient home with no or very little power bills. And people go on about the expense. Well, we'll find out that that's not really the case. So I recommend you sit back and listen to this, and I'm sure you'll be as impressed as much as I was. So welcome to the show, Bob.
Great to be here.
Yeah, in fact, Bob's here tonight. He's doing a presentation to I think developers, builders, techies and tradies that he wants to help join his movement, but I'm sure we'll talk about that afterwards. Just before we get started and talk about super homes, do you want to just talk a bit about yourself and who you are so the listeners know who's talking today?
Yeah, sure. I'm the owner, director of Bob Burnett Architecture. I'm an architectural designer, and we've got 6 other people there, architects and designers, and we're specialising in eco-friendly, energy-efficient homes, and we've been doing that for quite a few years now, so we've got a reputation for those sort of builds.
Okay, so that was always the case, or just in recent years, the eco side of it?
I think we sort of started doing eco homes before it became trendy, and probably 15 years ago.
Okay.
We started our business, and there's been a bit of a groundswell of people starting to think about building better than building code quality homes in recent times.
Right. So you've been an architect, that's your trade as such for up to this point?
Yeah, I'm an architectural designer, and 30 years experience. We've a year ago completed the first 10 Homestar rated home in Christchurch, and that's really been created, we got a bit of press with that, and it's created a lot of interest in building better homes, and we really wanted to show that and use that as a demonstration project to show that it isn't too expensive and it's not too difficult to do a much higher standard of build. And that was really the launch of the super home movement, which just this week we've now moved into the North Island. We launched it in Wellington on Tuesday and launching it in Auckland as well. That's really about sort of open source sharing of information to give the homeowners the right information about what sort of house they can be building so that they can get a warmer, drier, more comfortable house and get a better house for their money, really.
Right. So for the listeners that have no idea at this stage what a super home is, or how super homes come about, and what a plus 10 and a plus 6 and what a usual new build is, which I believe is about a plus 3. So these 2 houses you built, which is a plus 10, and I was in them last Friday, Yeah, how did this sort of come about? Obviously, you've been into eco homes for the last, you said, 10 to 15 years. What was the instigator of building these places?
Yeah, well, these are the first. The two-storey house was the first 10-star home in New Zealand, and we built two houses. One is a single-storey and one is a two-storey. They're still the only 10-star homes to date, so that's a really stretched target and real aspirational standard. So I think a good target is probably around 6 or 7, and that's a cost-effective build, which gives you a much lower running cost. A 6-star home would give you about half the power cost of a normal house, and it's only about 2.2% more build cost to build that. And Christchurch City Council and Housing New Zealand have recognised that, and they've implemented 6-star as a minimum standard in their specifications. So if they can achieve that standard, then I think anyone can, because they're building on a bare budget.
Absolutely. If Housing New Zealand are doing it, surely anyone can be doing it.
Yeah. I guess the Christchurch earthquakes have really led us to think about, I suppose, the silver lining to the cloud is people have been thrown into building that maybe weren't contemplating it, and it's really put a magnifying glass on the whole process and how we build and what we build, and so that's been a good thing. Unfortunately, there's sort of been an opportunity squandered almost, where we've really continued to build code minimum homes, and it's been business as usual. 3-star home star is the building code level, and we really think that that's not fit for purpose, and there's no reason to be building using the building code as a target and harnessing yourself to a huge power bill for the rest of the life of the building. So we describe the New Zealand building code as the worst house that you're legally allowed to build.
Yep, might find a few more around, not that good.
Yeah.
I suppose in Christchurch it said that maybe missed an opportunity when they started rebuilding to the +3s. I guess the other, which you're not really here to speak about today, but what I've heard from afar is the renovations of earthquake damaged homes was done poor, to say the best, around the place.
Yeah, there's been a lot of shoddy repairs done, and even in the very early days after the earthquake, they weren't letting people put insulation in their walls when they opened up the walls, because they said the insurance companies aren't paying for that. It's just there's been some mind-numbing stuff, and it's been very tough down there dealing with some of that. And, there's been some stuff there that's pretty bonkers.
Absolutely. And it's pretty harsh conditions down there in the middle of winter, I know. And standing in your place on Friday, the +10 place, would be a nice place to be spending the winter, that's for sure, I tell you. Yeah,
sure. We've loved it. Our office is in upstairs in what would normally be the bedrooms, and the first floor there in the 2-storey house, and we love it. We come in there in the morning and it's 20 degrees, and it could be 0 degrees, frosty morning, and no power bill. So our claim to fame is over the course of the year we're energy positive, so we pay a little bit for our power in the winter, and then we get a credit in the summer.
Nice.
We've also got batteries, so that we can store energy, and I guess probably the biggest leap forward in what we've done is using the solar power to power a hot water heat pump, and then that system, we heat the hot water in the hot water cylinder for domestic hot water, and we also use that same system to heat the floor, so that hot water is pumped through the floor as well.
Right. We'll talk about different aspects of different ratings of the home, but just on the solar power thing, I know other people, they'll build new with solar power, and obviously that gives you a higher rating anyway. But obviously that's not the be all and end all about having a warm house in every part of the house and in the corners, and so I suppose leading on from that question, what do you do to make a house better quality than the stock standard house other companies build for you?
Yeah, sure. I think it's not about sort of any one technology or even having a checklist of things that you can do. Have you got solar? Have you got rainwater collection, whatever, those sort of things. But it's really about the thermal performance of the building, and I call it the thermal envelope. So probably the most important thing, I think, is if you've got a good thermal envelope and you're not leaking heat, that's a key thing. And then also the size and orientation of the windows, so that you've got the correct solar gain. So you're first of all getting the sun in, using the sun's energy, and then keeping it in. And it's kind of about a holistic approach to the design and how everything works together from the ground up, rather than sort of individual components or technologies.
Right. So it starts off right, and instead of having a stock standard home, you're put on a square rectangle bit of land. You go there, you just look at where the sun is and what sort of property you can put on there, and that's the starting point before you even start building. You're finding the most effective place for it to sit and then gain the sun, as you're saying, inside through different aspects.
Yeah, it's the age-old principle of architecture: the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, and you'd think it's pretty common sense, but a lot of people actually still, in today's day and age, they get that wrong, and you can end up with a house that's sited to the south with too much south glazing because that's where the street is, and you really need to think about that carefully. And you also need to think about shading so you don't overheat. We think it's relatively easy to have a warm, energy-efficient house, but you've also got to think about overheating. If you get to that stage where it's nice and warm, it could actually become too warm if you haven't thought about the correct eaves and the correct window orientation and location.
Right. So insulation is obviously a big thing with homes. You said, you get the warmth in, then trying to keep it in is the big thing. So what different aspects of maybe a normal stock standard home that's built these days would a super home have? I know, perhaps depending on what rating it has, but even from underneath, from the foundations, what happens there?
Yeah, definitely. From the ground up, we've got an fully insulated foundation slab. So we're insulating under and up the sides, so we're not leaking heat, and that's really essential when you've got a heated floor. So most Kiwi homes don't have any edge insulation, and 80% of the heat is actually lost out of the edge of the slab.
Right.
So that's not a requirement in the building code, but it is an important thing. It's probably most of the elements of the house, the walls, the windows, the roof, they're all around about triple the R value or thermal value that's required by building code. And I think that's the level it needs to be at. We're kind of, our building code hasn't changed for many years, and we've kind of sort of got left behind, whereas other countries, they've progressed and they've got better in time and how they build, and we've really got stuck in our tracks. And the good old builders have thought, well, this is the way we've always done it, why would we do it any different?
Yeah. Was there any inspiration from any particular country or that you sort of looked at when you started, or just a mixture of what you've seen?
Yeah, well, the Europeans are very good at this stuff, and also my wife and partner, she's a Japanese architect, but Julie, another architect who has worked for me, is from France, and she's come from there, specialising in energy efficient homes, and Switzerland. Okay,
great. So for insulation or what have you, so you're using, I saw your home down there in Christchurch last Friday, as I said. Some of the product you use, is it the same product other builders companies can use within the country, or is it especially coming from overseas? And is it more expensive than the other product? If it is, obviously it's different.
Yeah. I think to get to a 10-star level is quite a stretch, and there is quite a bit of an additional cost. You don't need a 10-star home. We could do an 8-star home and have similar thermal performance and no power bill, for example. But what we've tried to show there with that demonstration project is that it's not too expensive, and we've done a small, spatially efficient house on a very small site, and we've tried to show that even these sort of homes, the mainstream market should be looking at better quality, better building methods and standards, and it's not something that's just for the big multi-million-dollar expensive houses. So in that regard, we've tried to use readily available materials, and it's more about the details of how it's put together. And we're using timber framing, but we're using a different type of timber framing. We're doing it in a different way, and we're using PVC windows with high performance glazing, but they're fabricated in Christchurch. They're components from Germany, but it's all put together in Christchurch. So it's not rocket science, and everybody could be doing this, and we should be.
We should be.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I know the single-storey house you've got down there, I think it's 112 square metres, is it? Hereabouts?
117.
117. And I've built a 155 square metre house before, and I'm sure just the space efficiency was it was almost, you think they would be the same size. And this particular house in Christchurch has a very big living area, big breakfast bar, very modern kitchen, and just the way the bedrooms are designed, and even the fact that these two bathrooms in it, and for 112 square metres, you'd be quite stunned. And as people go into smaller sections, especially here in Auckland, I think they're on about a 200 and something square metre section down there in Christchurch, and they're a good spacious house that feels spacious anyway.
Yeah, they're 280 square metre sections, roughly both of them, and I call that house a TARDIS. If you remember Doctor Who, the TARDIS.
Yeah.
So looking at it from the outside, or looking at the footprint of it, and that you'd think the feel is much more spacious, and we achieve that with a higher ceiling and just the window placement and how it opens out to the outdoor living space and decks and courtyard and things, and just very minimising waste space. I think if you can build something that's efficient and uses space well, then you can do a better quality build, and you can put more money into the quality of the build rather than the quantity.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so we've talked a bit about what a super home is and looks like. Can you tell us about the super home movement and what you're doing around the country?
Yeah, sure. Super home is more than just an energy efficient or eco-friendly home. There's a lot that goes into doing a great home, and there's a lot to think about. So, we think about energy and resource use, environmental considerations, but there's also resilience and durability and the longevity of the build, using low maintenance materials and building in a way that it's unlikely to be damaged if there's an earthquake.
Right.
These are all things that are important. There's no point in having the greenest home on the street that's a 10-star with no power bill if it's going to be toast after an earthquake. And,
can't handle a bit of rain.
Yeah,
or something. Yeah.
And if it's going to leak or any of those things. So these are weather tightness. These are all important things. So, and we think just design, having a good design, having a design that has integrity and is appealing and is delightful to live in and functions well. Design really filters through everything, but I think a key part of key criteria to a super home is design integrity, and that's a big part of what a super home is. The idea of the movement is really just to get the right information to the homeowner and create some awareness that it's really not too difficult to do a much better home, and which is going to be better value for money. And I think the other aspect to the movement is training the professionals. So a network of leaders in the industry, the top architects and designers and builders and subbies, and giving people the information. So it's open source sharing of information. There's no longer any trade secrets. So we're breaking down the barriers, and we
Nice.
think this stuff's too important, so we just need to get the information out there. And with a building code which isn't up to scratch, we really need to be telling people how to do better. And unfortunately, most homes are just built by building companies. They're built to a budget and focusing on doing it as cheap as possible to get the sale, and design, innovation, and new ideas are often pushed to the background. And so in New Zealand, 95% of homes don't see an architect, for example. And I think design should be filtering through and present in all levels of, all markets. And why not, And often people make decisions about buying a home without thinking about the details. We can't all be experts in how houses are built. And generally people sort of visit a show home, walk through for 20, 30 minutes and decide, I like the feel of this, or I like the look of this, the colours, the materials. They don't think about the details, what's going on behind the walls. And how
That's so important at the moment. We've seen so much on the news about unhealthy families and kids and sickness that's happening from the places they're living in. In fact, a lot of these are housing New Zealand homes that you were talking about before that are going to be a lot higher spec than coming up in Christchurch with the sounds of it. Well, one development anyway.
Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of think about energy efficiency and what's the power bill, and it's human nature. You think about the dollars and how it stacks up.
Yeah.
But health is a really serious issue in New Zealand. We have the highest asthma rate in the world, in the developed world, and it's largely because of our housing. We have an issue with condensation and moisture, even in a lot of relatively new homes, and we can avoid that by having the correct design, and we need to, because
So that comes down to design and product, the air tightness of a house, and quality of build, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're trying to point out what's absent from the building code, and there is really no standard for air tightness in the building code, and it is an important consideration. So there's a lot of moisture generated within a home when people are just living in the house, cooking and showering, and even just sleeping in a bed in a bedroom, two people at night.
Yeah.
Our breath, and if you're living in a house with single glazing, or even double glazing in some houses, and you'll notice condensation on the window. That's actually coming from our bodies, and that's got to go somewhere. So that ends up going into the wall cavity, and if it's 12.8 degrees, that's an environment where black mould can grow. And in a lot of houses, a lot of New Zealand houses, there's visible mould, but in a lot of houses there's actually hidden mould within the construction, and it's very unhealthy.
Yep.
So we can get around that by having an internal membrane, making an airtight building, and also having a ventilation system.
Right. Okay, so part of what you're doing, I think this weekend at the moment, you're going around the country and you're trying to attract tradespeople, architects, I guess, builders, the whole spectrum, is it, of the whole building trade, and educating and seeing what if they want to join the movement, or? We had 40 people down in Wellington, and there was a number of architects, designers, builders, even members of the public, and but also people from the local council and industry people, developers, and companies that just are working in this space already, or even companies that just want to learn how to do better and learn what goes into a super home. There was one lady who drove from Kapiti Coast down to Wellington, and she had an interesting story. She sent me an email, actually, and it's sort of a classic example of the super home movement in action for the homeowner. She has a son who has has an allergy baby, and has
problems and needs a really healthy environment to live in. And she thought she couldn't get a new house that's going to be a healthy home, warm, energy efficient home. Once she heard of the super home movement, she sent me this really heartfelt email saying how she thought that hearing about it and hearing about what we're doing and the super home movement had changed her life and given her a dream to, a target to go to. And so that's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely is. So just to get an understanding of the people that are dealing with it, and do you have to have so many people in a particular region before you can start, I suppose, evaluating what a super home rating is, and how does that get done?
Yeah, well, there's a number of ways. So basically, it's 6 to 10 on the Homestar scale, but you don't necessarily need to get a Homestar rating because that's quite a process and costs. Yeah. So you can be a super home by simply meeting our criteria, which is a simple checklist of things that are good to do. So we're not setting out to be in a rating system and compete with Homestar. And for us, it's really about getting the information out there about what people need to know, to what's really important to create a better home. And I think a really good thing we found is what we did in Christchurch is we had what we called the Exemplar Homes Tour. So we had 7 homes that were all they were all different, but they were all participants of the super home movement and built to a high standard. Some of them were zero energy. Some of them had rainwater, grey water recycling. Okay. All different ideas, and people really liked that. And we had about 2,500 people come through those homes during the month of May, just on Saturday and Sunday. So that showed that there's a real appetite for sort of learning how to do better homes, I think it's important for people to actually be able to visit a home and see it in the flesh and touch it, feel it, experience it. People don't understand plans a lot of the time, and looking at various options on websites, it's much better to be able to experience it in the flesh and feel the warmth.
Absolutely. There's certainly an appetite out there. I'm sure of that. In fact, the 2,500 people that went through obviously proved that. So when it comes to price, you're saying, it's what people listeners are going to think. It's going to be really expensive. You're saying when we first started, 2 to what percent dearer on average for
a 6-star home, which is probably a really good, cost-effective level.
Better than most places out there at the moment.
Yeah, that's going to provide you a much healthier, drier, warmer home than a 3-star code minimum home. It's 2.2% more, according to research.
Okay.
And, to get to say 10 stars, it might be 10% more, but you could end up with a house with no power bill. We think housing affordability, you've really got to look at the big picture and the cost of ownership as well as the capital cost to build up front.
Yeah. Showed me a stat last week. It was I think $2,500 per hour you're saving a year. And you put that again against the principal of the property. Compounding, it doesn't take that long before you've got your money back and you've still got a superior home that keeps you warm, healthy, and hopefully the house longer than other.
Yeah, I think if you look into the financial aspect, it is financially positive, and it just makes complete sense to put a little bit extra into the build so that your ongoing costs are much less, and then you've just got the added benefit of having a warmer, more comfortable, healthier environment to live in as well. Right.
So if people out here are listening, they could be a homeowner, for themselves, there's a lot of investors listen to this podcast. They're thinking, this actually might be a good way to, in fact, I suppose on the investment side of it too, you build a house like this, and because the power is so minimal, you can actually put a house out to rent with no power, or paying for the power for the tenant. And I'm sure the tenants are going to like that, and you're going to get the pick of the tenants because they're all going to want it. They might pay a little bit more rent for it as well. So that's an option. So if someone's listening and they think, how do I go about getting one of these? Do they go to like yourself and you, or the movement, Super Homes movement, and you recommend the builders, or how's it all work?
Yeah, a good place to start is have a look on the Superhome website.
Yeah, superhomes.co.nz.
Superhomes.co.nz. There's 2 sections there, Know How, with all the information about all the good things you need to think about doing, and then Know Who is a list of participants per region, so there's architects, designers, builders, and various companies that supply the products and things that are required. And I think as we launch into the North Island, you'll see more and more people coming up on the website. There's much more, there's a much larger number of people participating in Canterbury because that's where we started.
Yeah, makes sense. So you sort of verify that they say, hey, we're a builder, we like building higher quality than other builders, and this is why they can prove, I guess, from what they've done and got.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you guys do to verify it? Or?
Yeah, and so the builders are either invited because they're already working in this space and they're doing good things.
Yeah. And
or they're wanting to learn how to do better and upskill. And so we vet the builders and designers. And so the Superhome will become a very sort of quality brand. So you can rely on people and know that they've got the knowledge and skills to do a better home than a standard build.
Great. Okay. Before I'll finish off talking about our couple of events coming up, but anything else you want to add before we sort of wrap it up on Superhomes today?
I guess the key thing is in New Zealand we're using the building code as a target, and 90% or more of homes are built to code, and we've really got to move on from that and really look at achieving more than minimum standards. And if you're going to take anything away from this talk today, it's don't use the code as a target. There's a lot of things that are missing, and there's a lot of things that are not adequate, and not fit for purpose.
And just to vouch for anyone that's listening here, I mean, just walking around these 2 homes last Friday, it was a real pleasure to be there. It was a cold 10-degree Canterbury day, no sun outside, and they were particularly warm inside there, and it was felt comfortable, and there's a lot of other features that we haven't even spoken about today. Just coming up in the next couple of weeks, we probably Ventures are going to run an event in Auckland on the 11th of October and Christchurch on the 18th of October. Bob's going to be there also talking about Superhomes. We're going to do a wee sale on a project in Christchurch. So I recommend you come along. You can go on our website under our blogs. Actually, we've got our invite there, or ring our office, or 0800 NZ Property, our new 0800 number, and you can register to come to those events. And obviously, if you want to get hold of Bob, you can find more information out. You can go to the NZ Homes. Superhomes.co.nz. Thanks, Bob. All good. So we'll leave it there today, and I really appreciate your time, Bob. And I hope you have a success tonight here in Auckland, talking to other people like you that want to build better homes and do better for the people of the country, for good places to live in.
Thanks very much, Mark.
No worries, a pleasure. Thanks to all for listening. I'd like to thank Bob for coming and speaking to us today. And if you're ever in Christchurch and around the Annington area, I recommend you do go and have a look at these 2 homes. They are something to seriously consider when you are looking to build in the future. So come back next week and we'll be talking to Nick from Formants, which is a product used on exterior of homes. In fact, the outside of the homes, the walls, potentially the floors if it's not on a flat bit of land, and even the ceilings. And again, Superhomes use this product, so it's an option there. So until then, enjoy your weekend. We'll look forward to talking next week.